Hello everyone. The Punisher, starring Thomas Jane and John Travolta, turns 20 years old today. Wow, I feel old. In addition, Kill Bill Volume 2 also was released in theaters on this day. I'll be going over my memories of Kill Bill Volume 2 in August. It is tied to a much more important event that happened in my life, so I want to talk about that later. But I remember these two films, we just had the release of Passion of the Christ, Hellboy, Starsky and Hutch. Spider-Man 2 is arriving. We were gonna have The Punisher, and I remember seeing the teaser to this film when my father and I went to go see Ang Lee's Hulk in 2003. We had that famous teaser, and it had like his skull, but it wasn't dirty, it was a clean skull. And then I saw TV spots with So Far Away, playing, and I was just interested in The Punisher. I remember the Dolph Lundgren film, but I wasn't really aware of the comics till later. And of course, Punisher was a character in Spider-Man the video game for PS1. So I was excited to see this, and my father got a new job, and we were relocating to a different area. And while we were searching for houses there, we basically went to the local theater there, and this was one of the first movies, I think second or third movie I saw there. And it was quite something, even though it's not 100% like the comics, it's much more closer to the Marvel lore than people give credit. It's definitely like the Max series mixed with Welcome Back Frank. Thomas Jane is the Punisher. It's a shame that we never had a full sequel featuring him as the character of Frank Castle. The closest thing we got was the video game that was a movie tie-in / sequel that was awesome, by the way, underrated, as well as the short film Dirty Laundry. And I like this grounded character. He's not a superhero who's indestructible. He's not from another planet. He's not even like rich with a bunch of gadgets. No, he's a vigilante. But you see why he's the Punisher with police corruption and then what happens with his family. John Travolta is great here as Howard Saint. You have Will Patton as his henchman, Quentin. There's some funny stuff there. Rebecca Romijn is in this. Ben Foster. They're no strangers to the Marvel Universe. Kevin Nash plays the Russian. That fight was ripped straight from the comic books. And I love seeing this incarnation of the Punisher. Him undercover, him retire, wanted to have another kid, and his entire freaking family is killed. And that brought me back to films like Mad Max. It is a brutal opening, but I like the explanation behind the skull and then his revenge plot. There's some great moments of revenge here. Not as gory as some of the other films or TV shows, and definitely not the comics, but I like how grounded in reality this film is. And the music also is done wonderfully. And who could forget the soundtrack? I remember listening up to Step Up by Drowning Pool, Broken by Amy Lee, Slow Chemical by Finger 11, Ashes to Ashes by Damage Plan and Jerry Cantrell. That soundtrack was my 2004. Seriously, I love Punisher the album. I almost went deaf in one ear because that's how much I listened to that and how loud when I played it with earphones. This and Queen of the Damned are my favorite movie soundtrack albums where I could listen to from top to bottom. Love the soundtrack, especially with the ending of the film. This was such a really well done, and I think underrated, still is underrated comic book film, especially around this time. We weren't getting a bunch of stuff, with the DCEU, MCU, or Fox X-Men was just barely starting. But we're starting to see a shift, You had Blade, you had Men in Black, you had Spider-Man, X-Men 2 just came out, Daredevil came out, and we're about to get to Spider-Man 2. We just had Hellboy. And it's right before Batman Begins, before Dark Knight and Iron Man. So you can see a shift starting to happen. And overall, despite its low budget, this is such an awesome film. You can see my more in-depth thoughts on my movie review. But I just want to reflect upon it on its 20th anniversary. It has so many great lines like, this isn't vengeance, this is punishment, And I love that whole thing where he's like, John Travolta thinks his wife's having an affair. He's like, Howard, Quentin was gay. That stuff's funny to me. And the son, yeah, that was a cool setup with Howard Saint's son being Jigsaw in the video game as far as the sequel goes. But I love that part where Howard Saint's injured and he's like, you killed my son, and you hear his other son there, and then you just hear him scream, oh no, and then it blows up, and Frank Castle's just like, both of them. I made you kill your best friend, I made you kill your wife, and now I've killed you. I just love that. Who could forget Harry Heck? That whole part with the musician was very El Mariachi, so to speak. I love that confrontation there. Sic vis pacem parabellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. And it brought us war in the third act. And it pains me that we never got a full follow-up with Thomas Jane. Maybe we'll have like an old man Frank Castle down the line. I don't know, our multiverse movie. Regardless of how you may feel, I still think this is an underrated movie. The director of this also did the screenplay for Die Hard with a Vengeance as Mary DeGale, and Hurd, who was a producer with James Cameron on The Terminator. Even though Warzone resembled more of the Max series comic book, I feel like this Punisher was a more well-crafted film than its successor. And I think the closest to this film I've seen is probably John Bernthal's Netflix show. We'll see how his return is going to be handled in Daredevil Born Again and his series. But in the meantime, I still think this is an underrated film 20 years later. And if you have not checked out The Punisher, you should definitely check it out, as well as its sequel, 80s Incarnation, and Netflix shows. And definitely read the comics. They're underrated. And if you are a fan of Thomas Jane, you could also check out his short film Dirty Laundry, which is a short film that also has Ron Perlman. Those are just my thoughts of The Punisher 20 years later. Let me know, have you seen The Punisher, and where were you 20 years ago? When did you first see The Punisher? Share your Punisher memories down in the comments below. In the meantime, you can check out these other superhero-related videos for more content. Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Till next time.